Attacks on Elon Musk have been escalating since his acquisition of X, but now it's reaching its zenith. So who and what are behind the war on Elon Musk? Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage to truth and freedom. And what a war it's been so far. Can it be undertaken in good spirit and good faith? Can we keep in alignment with higher principles while facing a deluge of falsehoods and lies? Can we critique and analyze from a based position complex ideas? Why, all of a sudden, is Elon Musk being attacked where it really matters, right in the money hole? Is that the right way to say that? Advertisers are withdrawing from X, and even though high-profile figures are saying they will replace that advertising revenue, we have to think that this is part of a concerted and deliberate attack to bring down Elon Musk. Is Elon Musk unassailable due to his incredible wealth and influence? And what happens when a culture war that's become very adept at taking out individuals finally has in its sights a figure of real significance? Let's get into this story. Remember, we stream every day at these times on Rumble. Join us there to hear me speak absolutely freely.
New at 6 tonight, X, the website formerly known as Twitter, has filed a lawsuit against the media watchdog group Media Matters. Reuters reports X filed that lawsuit today.
It's just mentioned Media Matters, of course, who Elon Musk is suing. We'll look at their funding and how they operate. And also, just in passing, Reuters. And we always assume a kind of neutrality about Reuters. Elsewhere in our content, we've talked about the Trusted News Initiative, and we've talked about how Reuters were established. We'll be talking about some of these ideas later in the week.
Apple, IBM, Lionsgate, Paramount, and ABC News parent company Disney pulled ads from Musk-owned X, formerly Twitter. Musk appeared to backtrack, pinning a post to his account that says anyone advocating the genocide of any group will be suspended from this platform. Later, amid accusations he's anti-Semitic, Musk tweeted nothing could be further from the truth. In a blog post, X said the report completely misrepresented the real user experience to undermine freedom of speech and mislead advertisers. A spokesman for the company called the report contrived, saying Media Matters deliberately followed pro-Nazi accounts to get advertising to appear. Musk went further, threatening to file a thermonuclear lawsuit against Media Matters and all those who colluded in this fraudulent attack on our company. In a statement, Media Matters called Musk a bully who threatens meritless lawsuits. The White House has condemned Elon Musk for endorsing what it called a hideous anti-Semitic conspiracy theory.
This is extraordinary, isn't it? Thermonuclear lawsuits from a man who's able to prevent thermonuclear war through refusing to allow Starlink to be utilized to administer attacks on Russia. I mean, this is extraordinary where we find ourselves now. So how will this unfold? Of course, the times we live in, there'll be some people that watch this and just say, oh, Elon Musk, yeah, I'm sure that he is everything that he's accused of being. And other people will just say, well, this is plainly an establishment attack on a figure who opposes many preferred establishment narratives. Let's find out where we land when we look at some reporting and facts. On Thursday, Media Matters for America published an article alleging that the social media platform X has been placing ads for major companies next to pro-Nazi content. What I've noticed about how the legacy media behaves is they phrase things in the worst possible way, in the worst possible light, placing ads next to neo-Nazi content. Now, it's sort of understood that social media sites are used by a wide variety of people, and to police them to the point of purity would mean there would be nobody on them. Saying that ads are placed next to neo-Nazi sites might just say that on X there is a whole bunch of content, including people with affiliations to Nazis. In a sense, conceptualizing social media platforms is difficult for us because it's such a relatively new piece of technology. Do you envisage it the same way as you would envisage geography, that it has a variety of inhabitants cohabiting together with a wide variety of views? What is the responsibility of the people that own the platform? And specifically, how important is it that from the moment he acquired Twitter, as it was then, X as it is now, Elon Musk has been revealing deep state involvement, revealing the censorship of true information, opposing legacy media and establishment narrative? Do you think that this attack is entirely separate from that, or do you think there's a connection? I.e., do you think sometimes there's a figure in public life that there's an appetite to destroy, and then certain interests come together to work out how can we destroy this figure? And even if it's not as particular and hooded as that, there's obviously a convergence of interests, a set of ideological and economic and political interests that come together loosely. As George Carlin would say, you don't need conspiracy when interests converge. And are there a lot of convergent interests that see dissenting voices and go, take him down. As ex-owner Elon Musk continues his descent into white nationalist and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, wrote Media Matters reporter Eric Hananoki, his social media platform has been placing ads for major brands like Apple, Bravo, NBC Universal, IBM, Oracle, and Xfinity, or Comcast, next to content that touts Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party. However, according to the X safety team, Media Matters report was done by making a fake X account, then curating posts and ads to manipulate the account's timeline. These contrived experiences could be applied to any platform, X argues. I see, you could kind of make it happen by following particular people, by clicking on particular posts. I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? Like if you're a YouTube user or a Rumble user, you'll notice that if you watch like a long video on meditation, then you get a bunch of meditation stuff and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that all the time. So perhaps it's like that. X's analytics suggest that Media Matters repeatedly refreshed the timeline of the account it created to cause X to generate ads near hateful posts. The account, X says, saw 13 times the number of ads a median X user sees. So in a sense, it's a constructed narrative with an intention. Intention is extremely important. If you have the intention to destroy somebody, you can create a particular narrative. You can keep refreshing the screen. You can follow particular accounts. You can reframe events. You can suggest a particular perspective. It's easy to do. It's possible to do. This isn't a neutral investigation, is it? It's like, oh, we were just Media Matters. Let's look at Media Matters. Do they have an intention? Do they have a particular financing model? We'll get into that. Do they have an agenda? It's not like the mind of God was surveying reality and noticed, oh, this is malevolent, this is benign. No, there's an intention. There's an intention to destroy Elon Musk. There's an intention to take out a lot of dissenting voices. I know, because I'm one of them. And when you find yourself in that position, then pieces can be moved around on a chessboard to destroy you. And people go, oh, well, it's not. But there are so many ways you can manipulate information. Look at what's just happened in the last 3 years. According to X, in at least one instance, the Media Matters author was the only user to see a specific ad placement. Of the 5.5 billion ad impressions on X that day, less than 50 total ad impressions were served against all the organic content featured in the Media Matters article, X Safety wrote. We should not blindly trust X's defense of its ad policy. X obviously had a bias in how it measures its trust and safety, and so Public attempted to reproduce Media Matters methods to see if we found ads next to the content in question. We created an account and followed 11 of the neo-Nazi accounts in Media Matters reports starting yesterday, November the 19th. After refreshing both X's For You page and following page more than 10 times and scrolling through the timeline each time, we did not observe ads next to white nationalist or pro-Nazi content. We followed more extremist accounts and repeated this process after following 30 accounts. Still, we did not find ads on the timeline. We also opened each account's page and did not observe ads there, nor did we find ads under the replies to their posts. Media Matters did not respond to our inquiry about the exact methods it used for its report, but it sounds like there was an intention, because obviously Public and Schellenberger and those guys are a little more objective. Of course, all of us have our biases, but what it appears like is that they approach this somewhat in good faith, rather than how can we make this seem as bad as possible. Also, it's extraordinary to note the power still of commerce, that ultimately, if you live in a world driven by commodity and commercial interests, you can use that power to manipulate free speech. You can use that power to shut down dissenting figures. You can deplatform, demonetize, control, shut down any individual you want to using these interests. Disney and NBC or whoever else, they're not gods, they're not deities, they're not moral organisations. You can find plenty of things to say about Apple and Apple's practices abroad. You can't think of things to say about Disney and Disney's practices? Who the hell are they to be judging anybody? Who the hell are the legacy media to be judging anybody? Who puts these people in these positions? They put themselves in. Hello, we're moral arbiters. Don't look over there. Don't look at how we make our product. Don't look at our relationship with China. Don't look at what we're willing to do. Don't look at our past. Don't look at our depictions of racial minorities in the 30s or 40s. Pick any individual and go, this person. No one has any faith in our judicial, political, or media institutions, quite rightly, because they're demonstrably corrupt. And this is another story that shows that. I'm not saying that Elon Musk or X or me or anybody is perfect. Of course not. I'm saying, who do you suggest as the arbiter, other than some sort of decentralized, unbiased democracy between us? We can't have these legacy media organizations anymore nominating who gets destroyed and arbitrating who's right and who's wrong, who lives, who dies. What then is going on here exactly? Why is Media Matters leading a disinformation campaign and advertiser boycott against Elon Musk's X? Who is Media Matters exactly, and what's its real agenda? It can be difficult to take all this in. That is why you need to stay healthy. How? Field of Greens. Because there is a fieldofgreens.com Black Friday sale. It's on now and it's incredible. Right now you can get up to 30% off Field of Greens when you use the code VIP. Listen, you know me. I love greens. And like you, I'm seeing incredible results. You can survive almost anything. You might be under attack like Elon. You might be under attack like me. If you got Field of Greens, you're going to be like some sort of brick house, which will make sense to you at some point for perhaps the first time. You're going to have more energy throughout the day. Your skin's going to look healthier. Your digestion's going to be incredible. Like your flatulence will be sweeter than wine. Since I've been taking Field of Greens, my hair and nails, which were always growing suspiciously fast, have grown even quicker and healthier than ever before. I promise you, this will be one of the best things you can add to your life for better health. Don't miss this massive sale. You'll get 30% off your order. Just visit Brickhouse Russell, yeah, I told you it makes sense. Visit brickhouserussell.com and use promo code VIP for up to 30% off. That's brickhouserussell.com and the promo code is VIP for 30% off. Right, let's get back to Elon. In 2004, David Brock created Media Matters to push corporate news media to the left by framing it as right-wing, attacking Fox News and smearing people who appeared on it. Media Matters for 20 years has argued against false balance, which is the inclusion of conservative Republican or other non-liberal voices in articles on climate change, race, gender issues and COVID. It convinced a generation of liberal news journalists to reject the idea of objectivity, to stop seeking alternative viewpoints, and only to quote liberal and left-wing voices on a range of issues. When you include COVID along with climate change, race and gender issues, it shows you how authoritarianism is leveraged in a space that otherwise seems like it's about social equality. We all know there are narratives around race and gender and climate change that are undergirded by compassion, and similarly, the COVID arguments initially used compassion. Hey, we have to lock everyone up, you have to take this medication because we have to be compassionate and responsible towards one another. But do you notice how all of these ideas lead to centralized authoritarianism? Racism, gender, climate change, all are subjects you could legitimately make arguments for, but do you notice how the trajectory of these arguments is always towards more control? It's never towards compassionate discourse towards people, it's always towards censorship, it's always towards the assumption of guilt, and COVID legitimizes yet more centralized authoritarianism. It seems that while these arguments, and indeed this whole mindset, likes to portray itself as being about compassion, it's ultimately, it seems to me, about control. Let me know in the chat and the comments if you agree. Is it about compassion or is it about control? Media Matters does this by demonizing and discrediting its opponents. First, it seeks to demonize disfavored voices, including many liberal ones, by mischaracterizing their views to make them sound more extreme. The goal is to stop mainstream news organizations from quoting these individuals. Then after Media Matters has done this, it attacks the same voices as right-wing when they go on Fox News or appear in publications like the New York Post. So in a sense, it excludes them from the legacy media. Then when they try to use other areas to continue the discourse, it says they're right-wing. I've actually had all of those things happen to me personally. Because of the way that media's evolved, those initial attacks didn't work, so they just left it alone really, and I was allowed to get on with my life. Wait! Other examples, though, are Glenn Greenwald, Taibbi, Schellenberger himself, all figures that seemed to be perfectly liberal, legitimate journalists pursuing pretty ideologically well-rounded arguments and pretty cool objectives around censorship and free speech and all stuff that just used to be considered normal. And suddenly some line crossed them and they were unpersoned, called right-wing. Suddenly they're appearing before congressional hearings and being disparaged and their tax status is questioned. Clearly, something very unusual is going on, isn't it? During the pandemic, Media Matters smeared me at Marty Makary and other scientists for the crime of appearing on Fox News, wrote Stanford professor of medicine Jay Bhattacharya on X over the weekend. I told the American people that closing schools was useless for COVID and harmed children. Media Matters' business model is defamation of its perceived enemies. Before Media Matters used this strategy on Bhattacharya, it used this strategy on disfavored liberal voices on climate change like Roger Pielke Jr. and Bjorn Lomborg. This is not a coincidence. Rather, this is the Media Matters business model. As such, Media Matters exists to make progressivism more dogmatic, more tribal and more punishing of dissident liberals. And Media Matters isn't the only institution that does this. Media Matters works hand in glove with the Center for American Progress, a Democratic Party-aligned think tank that John Podesta founded the same year as Media Matters. Media Matters promotes CAP-approved experts while demanding that media not quote conservative or disfavored liberal experts. The money comes from the same people who give to the Democratic Party. George Soros gave $1 million to Media Matters and gave $3 million to CAP. Soros gives these donations as part of his broader support for Democrats. He gave $80 million to the Democratic Party in 2020 and $125 million in 2022. Soros was the largest donor to the Democratic Party in 2022. As such, Media Matters and CAP have always been Democratic Party front groups aimed at deciding what mainstream corporate news media outlets cover. They have successfully pushed the news media further to the left over the last 20 years since the two organisations were founded. It was Podesta, upon the defeat of Hillary Clinton, whose presidential campaign he chaired, who helped orchestrate the Russia hoax, which involved the illegal abuse of Department of Justice, FBI and Department of Homeland Security powers. It's curious how many organisations are often involved in these campaigns. And I imagine if we were to scrutinise Media Matters further and what's happening currently with Elon Musk, you'd find a congregation of interests that were recognisable and probably include the deep state, but plainly include Democrat Party figures like George Soros, even demonstrably in terms of its funding already. When Trump was elected, CAP fully embraced the so-called resistance, which didn't just disagree with Trump's policies, but also promoted the conspiracy theory that Trump had not been legitimately elected. Media Matters also was and is one of the single biggest drivers of Trump-Russia nonsense, wrote Matt Taibbi on X, a story which stank of Brock from the beginning. The attacks on X make clear that the real concern of Democratic Party elites is their lack of control over the public conversation. From 1996 to 2016, Democrats felt they controlled the elite policy and political conversation through the news media. After that appeared to fall apart in 2016, and as Democrats, including Podesta, blamed social media for Clinton's loss, they stepped up their effort to take control over Twitter and Facebook, which they did, demanding and winning the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop and deplatforming Trump. In fact, that was an incredible period of success, which already seems crazy, doesn't it? That story was totally suppressed and we were told it was a conspiracy theory and it wasn't, and a legitimate political figure, because he's not to everybody's taste, was deplatformed in a way that's pretty unprecedented. And again, this story seems like the kind of thing that you could construct if you wanted to. We all know that like ISIS and stuff have social media accounts, that across the world there are all sorts of people that have social media accounts, and you could, if you wanted, create the coordinate to make an attack. But no one's going to do that on Facebook, because Facebook is part of the machine. No one's going to do that on other compliant legacy media conduits, because they are part of the system. Elon Musk has become a figure like Trump, who you have to revise your perspective of, because it becomes clear that the establishment has a real strong view on him. And that for me is always an indication that something interesting is happening. Let me know if you agree with that in the chat. The strategy of Democratic Party leaders, including Clinton, Podesta and Obama, has been since 2016 to label Trump supporting Republicans as racists, Nazis and anti-Semites. The attacks on Elon Musk's X must be taken in this context. The real agenda behind the Media Matters attack on X is the same as the one behind the Democrats' attack on Trump and the Republicans. Democrats want to control the conversation. Without censorship, voters can see the border is a disaster, the Ukraine war was a tragic failure, and that the Democrats have been censoring them. Independent media is vital. You have to find ways of shutting down independent media, of controlling the conversation. Unique in this space is Elon Musk and platforms like Rumble, where people say, no, we're free speech absolutists. We're going to allow the conversation to take place. What's often inferred from that is these people must have particular political views because they're favouring essentially our opponents. But if not censoring the opponents is favouring the opponents, it makes you wonder where the real problem is, doesn't it? Media Matters is having an impact. Advertisers are fleeing and it's unclear if or when they'll return. Musk has announced lawsuits, but there is no guarantee they'll win. This is all dangerous because X must remain a free speech platform, given that after a similar advertiser boycott against Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg gave up and decided to effectively let the US government censor often true content on Meta. There is offensive content on X, including racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny and other forms of hate. Hate speech, while inflammatory and objectionable, is not harassment or a direct incitement of violence, which is already banned on the platform. As much as we may dislike it, censoring hate speech is often counterproductive. As we experienced under Twitter's previous leadership, censorship of hate speech often leads to censorship of political speech. And since hate and prejudice are based on ignorance, attacking the assumptions behind them publicly, not censoring them, is the best way to overcome them. I personally feel the very same way. We stream every day on Rumble, and I'm interacting with the stream live in the show. That's the point of our show. And I see many, many things that I disagree with, and sometimes personal attacks. But we have to allow it to take place unless it's criminal, and if it's criminal, there's already a process for that. This is hardly a new argument, and the only reason we need to make it again today is because the Democrats, legacy media, and civil society groups are opposed to the freer expression Musk is allowing on X compared to Twitter a year ago. Putting pressure on advertisers is a way for journalists and censorship advocates to force companies to remove content they don't like. There are other things we must do as free speech lovers. The public, voters, and media consumers should be more skeptical of mainstream news outlets, which today spread disinformation on many issues of public importance, from Ukraine and Israel to COVID and climate change to race and gender issues. It was the news media that demanded that the White House demand censorship by Facebook of true stories of vaccine side effects. I suppose the initial position we have to take is one of mistrust when it comes to the legacy media, and one of awareness and deep scrutiny of the way that these organisations interact. The obvious potential for corporate, state and media interests to align because of their obvious financial ties and the convergence of interests beyond that. This story, for me, is an objective example of what happens if you make a stand against their interests. And even if that stand is as simple as, we are going to allow free speech, you will be vilified, and they will use every tool at their disposal, starting with the withdrawal of finances, conspiracy theorists, your right wing. But in my experience, this will escalate into ad hominem attacks and then beyond, in an attempt to just silence any dissent or any potential to present a narrative outside of the one that means that they can completely control the public sphere and even your own psychological space. I think that the end point is they want total control of every individual's consciousness. That's what it seems like it's heading towards. The Media Matters disinformation against X makes clear that giant corporate advertisers, the news media, and progressive activist groups like Media Matters and CAP want to control the information the public receives to control America's political institutions. For that to change, we must become less dependent on the content created and provided by everyone from the New York Times and Washington Post to Disney, Warner Brothers, and Comcast. And we must have great control over the content we receive through social media platforms. And we must no longer trust the news media, a trend which is already well underway, including increasingly among Democrats. Plainly, that's what they are already anticipating. They are sensing a drift away from legacy media institutions and even entertainment-oriented corporations such as the ones listed there. They're anticipating that change, so finding ways to control the space and ensure that they retain control over online spaces, media spaces, and indeed, ultimately, the consciousness of the individuals that are the end goal of this. You remember at the advent of the internet, you would just use it in ways that seem inconceivable now. Downloading free music, communicating in ways that even for someone my age is sort of difficult to comprehend. I was not an early adapter in those spaces. Now, the online world has been tiled over by corporate logos. Unless you're particularly adept at internet use, you'll go through Google, you'll go through Facebook, you'll go through Apple or Amazon. These spaces have now been marshaled, parametered, and are indeed controlled by economic interests. Initially, there was a sort of a sense of libertarianism because they had to, by their nature, contain a diverse group of necessarily opposing opinions. But as they became siphoned off into various channels and communities, it became clear that certain corporate interests and commercial interests could manage the overall impact of that space. We saw outlier events like Brexit or the rise of populist politicians, and this is continuing across the world because people are ultimately, it seems to me, opposed to globalism. So globalism has to continually alloy its agenda to supposed issues that are significant to people around gender, identity, race, climate change, important ideas where there are important conversations that could take place. But those conversations can't be turbocharged by corporate, financial, and state interests that seem to have only one aim in mind: control. Control of consciousness, control of conversation, control of your ability to dissent, control of your ability to oppose or come together in communities that have an identity that's outside of what they're prescribing to you. A figure like Elon Musk is a danger. I don't know where this will head, but it seems that in Elon Musk, they have an opponent that can fight them in courts, that can fight them in the public sphere, that can fight them on social media platforms. Who knows where this will lead? But I agree with what Schellenberger proposes here. We have to support independent media. We have to be cynical, skeptical, discerning, doubtful about the legacy media. We have to recognize that there are now no reliable moral authorities at the heart of public life. You can't trust the legacy media. You can't trust the government. You can't trust the corporations that fund them. They have an agenda, and the agenda is control, and their control is antithetical to your freedom. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the chat? If you enjoy our content, watch us stream every day. Participate in that mad chat on there, baby, if you want to see what free speech looks like. More important than any of that, if you can, please stay free. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay